All right, my name is Kyle Kassenholtz, and this is my final presentation on the topic of is cancel culture an infringement of the First Amendment. I picked this topic because I thought it would seem kind of one-dimensional and something I'd be interested in, but as I kind of did more research and started thinking about it more, I learned that it's more in depth than I thought it would be. So let's get started. All right, what is cancel culture? Before we begin, I'm going to define some things that are going to be important to this presentation. So first one, what is cancel culture? Webster's dictionary defines cancel culture as the widespread, often social media driven practice of withdrawing support or canceling from public figures, brands, or individuals after they've said or done something deemed objectionable or harmful. It functions as a form of collective shaming, boycotting, or ostracization aimed at enforcing social accountability. So cancel culture is essentially a boycott against an action or an opinion done or held by a person or organization. The purpose of this boycott is to ensure that the offender is held accountable and for learning to take place in the area where the boycott is taking place. All right, what is the First Amendment? The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1791, prohibits Congress from restricting 5 key freedoms: religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. It guarantees that citizens can practice any faith, speak freely, publish opinions, gather together peacefully, and ask the government to address grievances. This freedom is crucial to the structure of our country, as it allows anybody to voice their opinions on important issues. Freedom of speech helps to hold people accountable, and it reduces corruption in the government. An example of this could be Nixon with Watergate or Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. These scandals that were done in government office, the freedom of speech allowed us to talk and speak out about them and bring them to light and hold these government officials accountable. All right, positives of cancel culture. I think cancel culture kind of gets a bad light, so I figured I'd put some positives in here. So cancel culture seems like a great way to ensure responsibility for the actions of individuals and can prevent harm before it happens. Some opinions are inherently harmful, and if an individual with a harmful opinion fears sharing it, harm can be actively prevented from many groups of people. An example of this could be like groups like the KKK or neo-Nazi groups having just these crazy opinions that are just obviously not acceptable. And cancel culture can be good in these scenarios because it can stop these opinions from spreading before they even start. All right, now we're on to the dangers. While cancel culture may seem like a good thing on paper, it actually does more harm than good in our country. While it is true that some opinions are inherently harmful, these opinions still shouldn't be silenced. Cancel culture creates a pressure in our society for individuals to conform to the popular opinion. A fear to speak out in our country is a massive threat to the First Amendment and can cause many issues going forward in our country. One statistic that I read that is relevant in this slide is at a time, the Red Scare with McCarthyism, which if you don't know what that is, basically a senator was calling people communist if they were going against his views and getting them thrown into prison. So during a time when someone would call you communist, you get thrown into prison, 13% of Americans felt that their freedom of speech was in jeopardy. Meanwhile, today in our culture currently, 40% of Americans feel like their freedom of speech is in jeopardy. So that just goes to show how strong the social pressure of cancel culture is today. All right, 2 areas that cancel culture have infiltrated heavily are the workplace and the school. I'm going to examine 2 cases on these issues and break down why I think it was wrong for the actions that were taken against these individuals to be taken. So we're going to focus for the rest of this presentation mostly on these cases. And yeah, first one we got is the workplace. So this was a recent one and one that I'm sure all of us remember, so I figured I'd throw it in here. So the first one is when Charlie Kirk was assassinated in late 2025, much of the nation mourned the controversial figure. However, a small group of people decided to mock his death or even celebrate it. While this is a terrible thing to do, it is not necessarily illegal. Some influencers close to Charlie took large offense to this and found the places of employment for these individuals and got them fired. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to defend the people that were mocking his death or celebrating his death. Probably not the right thing to do, but we can't force these people to lose their jobs. That's not right. That's putting their First Amendment in jeopardy. So, while the people mocking and celebrating the death of Charlie were acting in an unacceptable way, this was within their First Amendment rights. The workplaces that fire these individuals may have been right to be offended, but firing them over their opinions is an infringement on their First Amendment rights. Now, one thing that I would like to note about here is there's a difference between there's a beef line around. There's a difference between public and private workplaces. I think that public workplaces do have some sort of obligation to the public, and that they shouldn't be able to fire people. But private, same thing goes with schools. So I'm gonna note that on the next slide. But private institutions, maybe they have a little bit more, but they probably shouldn't just be firing people over their opinions. Okay, case number 2, the University of Florida. This one really kind of confused me. So the situation: a student at the University of Florida named Parker Hovis was 4 courses away from graduating from the University of Florida before he was arrested along with several other students at a pro-Palestinian protest on campus last spring. While the charges against him were dismissed and a school conduct committee recommended only minor punishment, a form of probation, the university suspended him for 3 years. He'll be required to reapply if he wants to come back. This, to me, was just a clear violation of his First Amendment, because freedom of speech, obviously, and freedom of peaceful assembly. From what I've done research on, I haven't found anything saying that these protests got out of hand in any way. Just a peaceful protest, and he got arrested and basically kicked out of his university for 3 years. He can come back, but if I was him, I personally wouldn't want to come back. So, thoughts. While the university may not agree with the ideas of Parker, he was acting entirely within his First Amendment rights. The action taken against Parker was unacceptable and is a clear violation of his First Amendment rights. So kind of what I said earlier, but another thing I want to know is I think that schools, especially colleges and universities, should be a place where opinions are like freely debated and just peaceful debate. And this kind of seems like something that should be accepted in a university and even kind of looked favorably upon. It may not be the most popular opinion, and may not represent the opinion of the University of Florida, but it still should be allowed to be debated and protested. All right, conclusion. While I can understand the appeal behind cancel culture and the harm that it prevents, I think that it is important to not limit opinions. While differing opinions can be very difficult to navigate, these differing opinions are essential for the growth of our country. Because of this, I believe that cancel culture is a danger to the rights guaranteed to all citizens under the First Amendment. So kind of what I said earlier about like the 40% of Americans being afraid to speak out. If cancel culture continues to grow and evolve over time, and people still feel afraid to express their opinions, we won't have these differing opinions that our country is built on and really drive innovation in our country. All right, question for the class. Do you believe that cancel culture is an infringement of the First Amendment? So basically what I just presented now. And these are my sources. This is my definition. Same thing here. And then these two are basically the situations that I presented on. All right.